When I was very young, I used to go to church with my parents. I also saw my parents praying, and I was impressed by their prayers. Although I always believed in the existence of God, I was still confused about some of the teachings and beliefs of Christianity, especially when I encountered some difficulties. I also used to doubt whether I was devout enough to truly experience God's presence and blessings. It wasn't until I was 25 years old that I experienced something that changed my life. It allowed me to truly give my heart to God. This experience changed my life and brought me closer to God. As a girl, I used to care a lot about my appearance. I often kept a slim figure by controlling my diet. However, this habit gradually evolved into anorexia. This mental illness prevented me from taking in enough nutrients and caused me to become progressively weaker. My anorexia began at the age of 21, when I ate very little food every day, and sometimes even skipped meals. Although I knew this practice was bad for my body, I felt very satisfied, because I felt I was in control of my body and my appetite. However, this behavior gradually became a psychological disorder, and I began to develop a strong fear and disgust of food, and even felt sick. My weight also dropped dramatically. By the time I was 25 years old, my anorexia had become very severe. I couldn't even perform normal daily activities. My family and friends were very worried about me, and they urged me many times to see a doctor and receive treatment. However, my psychological condition was already very bad. My physical condition was getting weaker day by day, and pain and discomfort had become my daily routine. The medication and surgery did not bring me any real improvement, and I felt very disappointed and helpless. I began to question whether I had the strength and courage to continue to face this difficult situation. However, I felt warmth and strength when I saw my family and friends constantly praying and caring for me. I knew I could not give up easily and had to keep going. At this time, my faith became my support. I began to pray to God, pouring out my confusion and pain to Him, hoping that He would bring me strength and peace. However, my health condition still did not improve, and I became weaker and weaker. Because of my thin body type, I felt the strange looks from the outside world. This made me feel very lonely and helpless. One night, I suddenly felt that my breathing became more and more difficult. At the same time, I felt a violent nausea, and I began to feel very uncomfortable. My body kept trembling, and the trembling became more and more violent, and I felt like my body was shaking like in an earthquake. I thought it was only temporary, and I tried to calm down and calm myself down. However, I didn't get better. My legs had no strength left, and I felt like I could collapse at any moment. I started to feel scared that I would lose consciousness and that I would die. Finally, I collapsed on the floor of my bedroom. My consciousness gradually became blurred, and everything around me began to become blurred and unreal. Suddenly, I felt that my consciousness was no longer confined to my body. It flew out of my body like a free bird. I looked at my thin self on the ground, and I was very shocked. I never thought that I would leave my body in such a state. I saw that my body had become unusually pale and thin, because I hadn't looked in the mirror for a long time. Even though I had left my body, I could still feel the intense pain and discomfort. It tormented me like a demon. I felt my soul was dissipating and my life was passing away. I tried everything I could to bring myself back to normal, but nothing worked. I felt like I was trapped in a transparent cage. I heard my mother's footsteps running up the stairs. I felt like a bystander, watching my body lying on the floor. I tried to call out to my mom, but my voice seemed to be swallowed up by the darkness. I began to feel scared and I called out again, but still got no response. Just then, I saw a huge black hole appear above my head. It kept spinning as if to swallow up all my consciousness and thoughts. When I went through that tunnel, it was pitch black all around me. I felt like I was floating in the air, and my body was very light. I saw a faint point of light ahead of me. Finally, I passed through that light and a beautiful view appeared in front of me. I was surrounded by a variety of flowers, all of which emitted an enchanting fragrance. I observed each flower carefully, and every detail was so perfect. There was also a turquoise meadow in the distance. All the pain was far away from me. I knew I had reached heaven. I saw a figure appear in front of me. That person was my grandmother. I quickly walked up to my grandmother. She looked very young, as if she had returned to her 30th year. I knew she had been living in heaven for many years, but she looked exactly as I had seen her when I was a child. She died of cancer when she was 72 years old. I was just a little kid then and didn't understand the meaning of death. Now I am very happy to see that she is living a happy life here. When my grandmother asked me if I wanted to go see Jesus, I felt a surge of excitement in my heart. I immediately answered aloud, yes, yes. I had always longed to meet him. My grandmother gently held my hand, and we walked together through the meadow. My eyes suddenly became bright. In the light of the glow, I saw a figure walking toward us. As he came to me, I realized it was Jesus. When I saw him, I felt something indescribable in my heart. I burst into tears. He looked at me tenderly, as a mother does with her child. It was as if all the restlessness was released in his eyes. I told him that I had suffered from anorexia and that people around me were very indifferent to me. He told me that he knew everything I was going through. He let me know that his love and care was always there for me. He said that everything would be okay. I felt healed of my broken heart after hearing his words. I noticed his appearance. He had dark brown hair and brown eyes and looked powerful. He was wearing a simple robe with no ornaments. It made me feel that he was a very simple man, yet with infinite wisdom and power. I said to Jesus, "You are a very handsome man." He just smiled and replied, "Thank you, but appearance is not the most important thing." Then we both laughed. I looked at him and thought his words made perfect sense. He seemed very gentle and had a reassuring feeling. We also talked a lot about life. Many of the questions I had were answered. I felt like I had established a special connection with him. Jesus told me to go back and tell everyone what I had seen. I said firmly, "I will." He looked at me, then extended his arms to me and held me tightly in his embrace. At that moment, I felt a strong sense of love and strength, as if the whole universe was behind me. It filled my heart with courage and hope. It was a wonderful time that I will never forget. The moment I returned to my body, I felt a strong shock as if I had fallen from a high altitude. I opened my eyes and found myself lying in bed. I missed that wonderful place where there was no sorrow or pain, only warmth and peace. I touched my head and felt a little dizzy. My mother asked me with concern if I needed to go to the hospital. I shook my head. I told her that I just needed to get some rest. I lay in bed, thinking about everything that had just happened. I missed the beauty of being there, but I also knew that I had my own mission and responsibilities to fulfill. When I woke up the next day, I felt very hungry. I hadn't felt this kind of hunger in a long time. I ate a lot and enjoyed every bite of food. I was able to taste the flavors and textures of the food, and the feeling was very satisfying. It was the first time in years that I was able to enjoy food with such pleasure. The next day, my mother took me to the hospital. He examined my body, but he didn't find anything unusual. A few days later, the doctor called me to say that he wanted to come and see me because he had found something strange. He told me that my kidney function was back to normal, which surprised him a lot. The doctor could not explain why my kidneys had suddenly returned to normal. Only I knew the reason. Jesus touched me, and he healed my body and soul. A month later, I returned to the hospital for a checkup. The doctor was surprised to find that I had gained a lot of weight and my body had become very healthy. When I returned from the hospital, I gathered the courage to tell my mother about the experience. However, she didn't believe me. Especially when I mentioned that I had seen my grandmother. She thought I must have heard something about her from someone else. But in fact, I had never heard anything about my grandmother, and I knew nothing about her except that I had seen her picture. I described more details about my grandmother. I believed that such descriptions would convince my mother of my experiences, but she still doubted what I said. I was very disappointed that my mother could not believe me. Finally, I chose to remain silent. They thought I was crazy or lying. However, I knew it was a real experience and the feeling was indescribable. I know that heaven is my home. I will be reunited with Jesus again. Even though many people don't believe my story, I don't care. I know that God is all around us and that His presence is real. No matter what I face, I have a greater faith and strength to face it. I know that God is there for me and will protect and guide me. When I was very young, my parents got divorced because of their personalities. It was a very heavy blow for me, and I felt confused and lonely. I started to become introverted and not good at expressing my feelings and emotions. I often thought that if marriage would be so hard for people, then I would rather not get married. As I got older, many couples around me had conflicts and problems. I feel that marriage is a very complicated relationship that requires a lot of energy and time to manage. I was afraid that I would not be able to handle such pressure and challenges. However, everything changed when I met my husband. He is a very wonderful person. He was able to give me a lot of security, which made me feel that I could trust him and share my life with him. We began to get to know each other and gradually developed a deep relationship. Eventually, I decided to marry him at the age of 36. Although we have had our share of problems and challenges, we have always been able to overcome them together. I am very glad that I made this decision, and I feel that I have found true happiness. A year after we got married, I got pregnant. My husband and I were overwhelmed with excitement and happiness, because it meant we were about to have a child of our own. My family was just as excited, and everyone was excited and anticipating the arrival of a new baby. However, when labor started, everything became extremely difficult. My cervix did not dilate properly, causing me severe pain. I felt like my body was reaching its limits. Despite the doctor's efforts to help me, the situation did not improve. As time passed, I began to feel unconscious, and it seemed that I could no longer bear the pain and suffering. In this situation, the doctors kept taking steps to hopefully relieve my pain. During this difficult labor, I was in a constant state of panic. I didn't know what was going to happen next. Suddenly, I emerged into a darkness. I felt like my heart was stopping. I started to feel panic because it meant that my life was slowly disappearing. Even though I was in darkness, I could still feel the weakness and helplessness of my body. I could only listen to my fate. I didn't know what would happen next, but I hoped I could continue to live. I heard the last words the doctor uttered. Her heart had stopped. I was floating in that dark space, without direction or purpose. Suddenly, in front of me, a door appeared. The outline of this door was clearly visible, and it was slowly opening. A dazzling light was emanating from the door. I felt that the whole space was illuminated, as if all the darkness had dissipated. The light made me feel very comfortable and warm, as if it was welcoming me. I could feel the energy from the light, which was constantly healing me. I felt a great relaxation and relief for my spirit. I did not hesitate to walk through that door. When I entered that door, I saw a beautiful garden. The garden was filled with flowers of various colors, and a faint white light shone around the petals of each flower. The atmosphere in the garden was very warm and inviting. There are many varieties of flowers here that I have never seen before, let alone know how to describe them. The fragrance of the flowers filled the air. The sky was a color I had never seen before. It was so clear that it seemed to penetrate everything. A person suddenly appeared in front of me. As I gazed at the person, I realized that the face was very familiar. It was my aunt. She had passed away 10 years ago. But here she was even more beautiful than I remembered. My aunt looked at me with a smile. I also saw the rest of my family. My great-grandfather died before I was born, but I know it was him. I could feel his love and attention. Their presence made me feel very warm. When I turned around, the sight in front of me was very shocking and unexpected. I saw my deceased mother, who left when I was 17 years old. I have always missed her, especially when I was facing difficulties and challenges. My mother took care of me after my divorce, and we spent many memorable times together. It was only after her death that I lived with my father. I was a rebellious teenager at the time, and my mother and I were always arguing over petty things. On the day she died, we had a heated argument over a study issue. At that time, I was in my rebellious stage and always felt that my mother could not understand my heart. During that argument, I said to her, "I hate you," and I said a lot of things that hurt her. In the evening, I quietly packed my bags and secretly left home. The next morning, my father reached out to my teacher. My father told me that my mother had died in a car accident. I couldn't accept the news at that time and couldn't forgive myself for what I had said to my mother. I later learned that my mother found out that I was not at home shortly after I left. She drove around outside looking for me. But on the way, she was involved in a serious car accident. When I recall that moment of grief, I still can't calm down. I said so many hurtful things to my mother when I got into an argument with her. Now I know it was the stupidest thing I ever did. My mother left so suddenly, and I never thought she would leave me. I didn't have a chance to apologize to her and let her know that I really loved her. This incident made me feel guilty and lost. Whenever I think of the argument I had with my mother that night, I feel very regretful. Later, my father always reassured me that it was not my fault. But I knew I could never truly forgive myself, because I hadn't had the chance to apologize to my mother or tell her how much I loved her. Now that she was standing right in front of me, I couldn't believe my eyes. Was this real? Or am I having a dream? My mother smiled, reached out and stroked my hair, and said, "This is real, my daughter. We talked about the day she died, and I kept apologizing to her because I had been feeling so guilty. My mother reassured me and said, "No, it's not your fault. It's just that my time has come and I have to leave." Hearing these words made my heart feel very heavy. Mom took me in her arms and gave me a warm hug, just like she did when I was a child. I felt myself surrounded by a strong force that made me feel very warm. At this moment, I felt that the heavy burden inside me was soothed. Here, I couldn't feel the presence of time, and we continued to talk. I asked my mom if she was angry with me for something I had done before. She replied, "No, those things don't make any sense here." She finally told me that she would be here for me, but that I had to go back now, because my time was not up yet. I told her that I didn't want to go back, and that I wanted to stay here with her. She gently patted my hand, then told me that my mission was not yet complete and that I needed to return to Earth to continue my journey. I would have a healthy son, a child who would need my company. Then my mother reminded me that her marriage to my father had been a failure, and she knew the damage it had done to me. But she still wanted me to find my own happiness. She gave me some advice about marriage. She told me that I must trust each other in marriage and be more tolerant. Don't be like her and my father, who were suspicious and hurtful to each other. I was grateful for my mother's advice and promised to work hard on my marriage. After I hugged the other relatives goodbye, I curiously asked my mother how I should go back. My mother gently told me that she would drive me back. As we walked in the garden, we talked about many things from my childhood. I remembered a funny thing. At that time, I was about 8 years old. My mother made me wash my hands, and I accidentally dropped the soap in the toilet. I was afraid of being blamed, so I threw the soap box into the toilet too, hoping to cover up my fault. As a result, the whole toilet bowl was clogged. My mother and I both laughed out loud. Soon we came to the front of the door. I slowly walked toward the door, feeling an inexplicable wave of sadness well up inside me. My mother stood beside me and hugged me tightly. Her eyes were full of love as we parted. She told me that whenever I needed her, I could think of her and that she would always be there for me. I assured her that I would live a good life. Finally, my mother kissed my forehead and gently patted my shoulder. Then, I walked through the door. My mother slowly disappeared from my sight. When my soul returned to the hospital, I saw myself lying on a hospital bed. There were several doctors and nurses standing around. They were performing a cesarean section on me. At this point, I began to feel scared because I didn't know how to get back into my body. I began to look for a way to reunite my soul with my body, but everything was very difficult. I closed my eyes and started praying to God. I hoped that God would help me. My son still needed me. My prayers were answered by God. I felt my soul return to my body. At first, my body felt a little heavy, but it soon adjusted. When I opened my eyes, it was noon the next day. My family was very happy to see me wake up. I noticed my husband hiding next to me, secretly wiping tears from his eyes. This made me feel warm because it was the first time I had seen him shed tears. I asked him what had happened. He told me that I had lost so much blood during the delivery that there was a time when my heart stopped beating. When I saw my son for the first time, I was so excited. He was lying quietly in his crib and looked so cute. I gently approached him and tried to touch his face. His skin was so tender. His hair was very soft, like sheep's wool. His eyes were tightly closed and his little nose was slightly wrinkled, as if he was dreaming. I looked at him and kept weeping. At this moment, I felt very happy. Now I am sitting quietly in the living room, looking out the window, and I can't help but feel how fast time flies. In 10 days, it will be my son's 18th birthday. Looking back on the process from his birth to now, my heart is full of emotions. He is a very obedient child and very kind, always willing to help others. I feel very happy and proud to see him grow up. However, I often think of my mom, who was a very important person in my life. Although she passed away a long time ago, I still feel that she is by my side, always watching over me and my family in silence. I know that she has been waiting for me and that we will be together again in heaven. I will return to her someday in the future. This makes me feel very warm and comforting, and makes me appreciate every day in front of me even more,